everybody. Welcome to the show tonight, and welcome to a classic battle. You've heard of Ford versus Ferrari, but we're going to go to an even bigger battle that occurred. Let me make sure. I did this the other night. There you go. You should be able to hear me better now. You've heard about the classic Ford versus Ferrari battle that was in major motion pictures and over the summer, and classic this week. The year is 1996, and actually probably 94. Kart is in its best years that they'll ever have. Indy is huge. Yeah, NASCAR is booming, and two Japanese car makers decide to fight it out in the American oval scene with Indy cars. Now, I will agree that Toyota, that's funny, Tamiya versus Kyosho might have been a forgotten battle, but we're going to talk about a lot tonight. Now, I can already hear somebody saying, hey, what about, let me make sure we got the comments up too. What about all of our friends at HPI? They did make an Indy car, but it was a third runner and didn't get the commercial success that Kyosho and everybody else had. So we're going to talk about two of the biggest competitors, and we've got a couple of really classic Indy cars. So with that, let me see. Has anybody posted up yet? I don't think so. So we'll just go on the expectation that there's a few of you out there. So here's what we got. We have the first of our contenders is, oh, that's blurry. How did that happen? Boom. Is the Lola T94 Honda. This was a Ray Hall Hogan car. It's actually original box, everything from that era. This was a 1994 Tamiya kit. They made a couple, three of these. And this one's a little bit rarer than, they made a Texaco Haviland car that Michael Andretti drove. This one's a little rarer than that, but we'll open her up, and there is some amazing 1990s technology in here. So let's go through the box really quick. And one of them is, we've got a few things left on the sprues. We'll get into the two wings in a second. We have the original Tamiya motor that came in. It's got a staple in it. That's funny. Let's see why. Get rid of that. And we've got some springs, owner's manual, and kind of all the other stuff that goes along with it. And this actually did show, that's a drawing of the car, and then that's the original configuration that Tamiya was hoping that you would paint it in, and that is how this car ended up, fortunately. So let's get into it. Now, you may remember, this is actually, something I got a screw loose, maybe more ways than one. Now, you may remember that the Tamiya folks decided to use a lengthened version of their very popular F1 chassis, and that's really all this is. They took, I think it was an F103, which was very hot selling, and they lengthened the car out and gave us this iteration of it. Now, you got a couple of different wings with it. This would have been the Indy high-speed wing, completely useless when it came into RC. You could not get the car to turn. You couldn't get it to do anything with this wing, and you'll find these in the box because rarely anybody used it. The on-road configuration, however, much larger front wing, which was functional, and a rear wing. The problem that the car had was extraordinarily loose. Even though it was a long wheelbase car, it was extraordinarily loose, but it did have the wing. Some folks started releasing bigger rear wings. That was really the kind of the fatal flaw with this car. You just couldn't get any rear downforce. The couple other fatal flaws is that it had a very small motor box. So replacing this out, also it had a plastic motor plate that you could buy a hop-up for to get to an aluminum, but a very hot, at that time, brushed motor would be terrible on that. And the battery went in crossways. In a really cool system here, what you would do is you'd take these clips out, and the side would actually drop out. You'd slide your pack in, and then lock it back up on here. And so let me just go ahead and do that, and we'll continue on with our tour of the car. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about pivot balls. This is not. This is a true T-plate car. They actually cut the T-plate out of the back here. You could also grind on these quite a bit and get a little bit more action out of it. Very stiff side to side. And for dampening, they went with, this also was similar to a lot of other kits. You had 2 dampening plates and 3 plastic parts that went in there, and then a spring on the top, spring on the bottom to give you dampening. Now, they called this a shock. It was not. It was actually a dampening rod. But it was a great basher car. You didn't see a lot of them get raced. You would see this lead to a few hop-ups. Very first episode, if you want to go back and watch that, we did show the Woods car, which was a competitive car. This was just really for fun. Now, a couple of other things. It had a really cool front end that mimicked a true Indy car suspension on the top. You had the pins out here, but these didn't move like an Indy car would, but it gave a great view. And then these tires were just ultra hard, but worked pretty fair on carpet. And I've seen them ran on asphalt. This car actually, I don't think has ever been ran, but it's a great example of Tamiya technology at the time. Now, let's switch over. We'll set this one aside for a second, and we'll bring in contender number 2. This is original Kyosho Penske PC-19. It's in Rick Mears livery, and just an incredible body and everything. Now, this was truer to the Indy car front and rear wings of the time. And actually, there's a picture here. And this was designed to compete in the same market as the Tamiya car. Very similar thing here. Let me get it. Get the box open. And you're going to see a number of things that our friends at Kyosho did. Again, original manual for 1994. It was pretty word intense. So I don't think they were doing a whole bunch of stuff. And then somebody along the way decided to highlight it. So I don't know what that was about. But we got some extra pieces in here. And there were a few hop-ups on this car. And then the stickers for the wheels and everything, which weren't applied. And you're not going to see that on a car that's sold anymore with the Marlboro logos. That actually became illegal to provide. So really cool. That thing, and actually it's illegal now to put them on a car. So this is our friends from Kyosho's iteration of the Indy car. This would have been a Chevrolet design. And a couple of things to note. One, they did keep scale pretty close to one another. You're going to see that the pods are about the same size. A little bit different idea of how the rear end went together. Some of that, and then the nose is really the big piece out of this. Is the nose was much longer on this car. When we put them side by side, whoops, you'll get a really good view of that. But both still highly detailed bodies, and just a really good kind of sign of what was going on then in Lexan. So this, again, pneumatic tires out front, but this is where this car gets extraordinarily cool. And so let me bring it up here so you can see it. It actually has a true push rod front end. So let me focus you in a little bit. Yeah. So you'll see this tie rod actually goes to these 2 shocks in the inside. So it's actually, this is literally a push rod front end. And so it's going, both are moving up and down, and you can see it cantilevering down. And actually there's a really cool assembly. I don't think we're gonna be able to get detailed enough to show you. Let me see if we can do it. This whole shock piece is moving. The other thing you'll note is there's actually brake coolers on the car. I think that's just a really cool piece that they added. But again, one of the rare times that you'll actually see a cantilever front end. And then it's using these rubber bands on the front to build tension to pull it back. So you've got just some really, like I said, we'll come back to it. Servo mounted, or the servo mounted over here, that is a gigantic receiver in there, and it happens to be on 70. And then if you've never seen one of these, you're in for a real treat. This is a mechanical speed control. Let me move all this out of the way so you have some clarity around it. The mechanical speed control. So what would happen is it used a resistor and a second servo. So what would happen, this servo would push back and forth, and it would change the resistance. And that mechanical motion actually then changed the amount of voltage that was going to the motor. This is a brushless. It's actually a Lamaze, a Kyosho Lamaze Mega motor, 22 wind brushed motor in here. We'll get you a shot in a second. And then this went over and mounted where the battery would have plugged in. So again, this is an unusual thing. What this was is you had the resistor here that was changing. And of course, all that was doing was moving down. It's rewired to the front. And that's actually where your resistors are, is right in here. And this thing would have gotten firecracker hot. Now, they carried the same design to the rear end. So this is a actual transmission with cantilever rear end. This I haven't seen since they did these cars in 10 scale, but incredible detail. Again, cantilever to two tiny shocks. There's a great shot of those. And then you can see the independent off of the transaxle transmission. So just incredible. Also on this car is a 3-gear, 2-speed, actually 3-gear, 1-speed transmission, but you could change all 3 of these gears and move them around and change speed. So again, just some really interesting things happening with this car. Now, from a handling perspective, I had a couple of things going for it. One, the extraordinarily difficult nature of tuning a cantilever front end and rear end kind of limited what it did on the track. However, you can't, I mean, just the coolness factor alone, this thing is off the charts. The other thing that you can't get a really good feel for on the cameras is how heavy this car is. All of this, I bet this thing's 50 some odd ounces. Now, some of that's coming from the large motor in the back, and then some of it's the speed control and another servo. So there was a lot of action going on. But just like I said, this is one of the few that you're going to actually see with a real functioning end, both ends on it. Now, the other thing too, let me show you the articulation on the rear end. And so this thing would actually, there you go, you can see it moving up and down, side to side. So this functioned as a real Indy car. So let me see. Yeah, the right resistors are on the side because they'd always get nice and hot. Yeah, you would definitely burn yourself there. Now, let's put them side by side, and we'll give you an idea of a couple of different things. One, this is where the proportions get a little bit screwy. I measured it out. If you go by kind of scale rear ends or scale size, this is actually more accurate. Tamiya actually lengthened the car too much. I think they did that to try and get the car to hook up better. Also, they probably had some body things, but significantly longer design than, I'll give you a little bit update, than the Kyosho. Tires slightly different. These are actually more to scale. These were a little bit bigger, but they were foams and could have been trued down. The wheels, fairly similar design between the two. Both are single nut wheels, and they both have the wing out behind the rear end of the car. Again, cantilever system versus T-plate system. Dog bones and CVDs versus almost a pan car. On the track, easy to tune, actually understandable for most folks to deal with the Tamiya winds. Coolness factor, though, and I can't even imagine that somebody ran one of these cars on the street, but you could, I suppose. Plastic, lower plate, and you had obviously the, I'd like to say it's graphite, but it is not. This is a fiberglass. Yeah, road was, Mike, that's a great one. Doesn't have the better. It's probably as heavy as a brick. But I did score this weekend. I was so excited. I scored a bunch of black Sanyos. So next week, we will have black Sanyos back in the cars for the first time. I don't even know if they'll charge, but they'll be here in the next few days. I'm pretty excited about that. We're going to talk about a new, some of those. We have some Panasonics and some blacks coming. So again, this is just one of those deals that they had going. Very, very hard plastic, much smaller than that, but you get an idea of what each had going on. The other thing that's really cool is down here you can actually see how the cantilevers worked on this car. And let me give you some articulation. There you go. Yeah, so it's moving the whole piece just as it was supposed to versus the pan car. So back to kind of the comparisons. It's interesting, though, that our friends at Kyosho did so much work, but then they gave us kind of a flimsy Lexan wing, where our friends over at Tamiya gave us a hard plastic. Both would have held up just fine, but that is just kind of weird that they decided to go with Lexan in the rear of this car after they did all the other stuff. The other thing that you couldn't do with either car is ride height adjustments. So you were fairly limited in what you could do with them. You could get about 1,000 hop-ups out of the F103 lineup for this. Everything but the chassis would work. It's just a lengthened version, and it's all in this area is where they lengthened it. Almost nothing available for this car. And this was really just kind of built, I think, in kind of that classic Kyosho. Let's go build something really super cool that has a scale appearance that works kind of the same way. I've never opened the transmission on this car, but I would love to see how it works in there with the extra gears. But yeah, so that is the battle. So I think the question that we're all asking is, how did it turn out? Well, it turned out this way. The IndyCar kart series essentially bankrupted themselves because of a decision by a bunch of owners versus a whole bunch of folks that were running kart. IndyCar Racing League, so it was the IRL, got formed. That eventually tried to run against kart. Both failed, and then it became the IndyCar that we know today. Unfortunately, IndyCar racing wouldn't recover for about a decade, and we wouldn't get to see new IndyCar designs for a number of years. So these two kind of stood up on their own for a long time. Now, recently with the F1, Associated made an F1, now discontinued. X-Ray makes an incredible F1 that does a fantastic job. We're seeing some other ones. HPI's played in the market, out of the market. They've been in business. They've been out of business. They've been in business. So I think the jury is that both cars did an incredible job of representing the IndyCar. Both cars did a horrible job on the track, but it's a great thing kind of down memory lane on these. And again, both, fairly accurate to what they were trying to do. They were both trying to showcase the real proportions of an Indy car, which would be longer and narrower than an F1 car. So with that, I'm going to go and we'll take some comments and discussions and see what you guys are thinking about. Pretty quiet crowd tonight. Yeah. So Mike Woods is giving me information on how to do the dead. Yeah, I've got to actually short them all out. Well, I will see if they'll charge. We'll see if they leak. CRC, I should have mentioned that. Yeah, CRC had one, and actually Corrali back a long time ago did make one. too. And then they actually made where you could get the pieces for their pan car to kind of convert it into like this weird IndyCar thing. So yeah, those were there. So let's see. Anybody else? Seems like we're quieter than normal. Oh, Wendell joined us. Hey, Wendell. Yeah, Houston has like 8 of these things all tuned up. Let's see. Anybody? You know, I may be able to put my hands on a zapper too, Mike. I know where there's been a few over the years. I think I know a couple that exist. Or hook them up backwards to a carburetor. I've seen that done down in Tampa a few times. So let's see. Anybody else have anything? Any comments or questions on the Indy cars? We'll give you one more second. All right. So we'll do a couple of other things, do some housekeeping. So Sticky Icky Live is Thursdays at 8:30 Eastern. Pretty good show forming up for Thursday. And if you missed it, we did a what I would call an expert course on rollout and motor theory. We'll go a little bit lighter this week. We'll also probably be, may want to join us. We'll probably have an announcement on another project that Reese and I have been working on. And we're pretty excited about the upcoming episodes. If you guys will PM me anything that you would like to see on this, we're actually going to have some guest hosts. So next week, I think if everything works out, we will have a guest person on the show. And actually for the next 2 weeks, I think that we will probably have guests. And so if you also have a cool car that you'd like to show off, let me know, PM me, and we'd love to have you on the show. And then next week, hopefully Danny will be on with his Leonard Woods Nitro. They called it a pan car. TRC made it. They partnered with Leonard Woods, but it was not a pan car. It was probably one of the coolest examples, and also one of my largest regrets ever selling that to Danny. But we'll have that. But like I said, if you have one, we've got a brand new, if you guys remember, the Titan then became the Trinity Reflex. Jim Pullman will be on in a couple of weeks showing off one of his originals of that. And like I said, if you've got one you want to be on, let me know and we'll get you on the show. And everyone said no classic dirt oval this week. Yeah. Well, we will be back with a whole bunch of dirt oval stuff, and I'm going to try and convince Rob Goodman to come on. He's got a couple of very classic Custom Works cars from California, so we'll see if we can get he is on there. Too bad they're not as popular as some of the other classes. I know. I was an IndyCar guy growing up, and I love these, but we also have, you guys may find this hard to believe, I have more IndyCars, but we've done 3, so it's in disproportion now. So we may have to go do some other stuff for a while. One of the future shows, too, that we're going to have is we're going to talk about the generational movement of the Hyperdrive SSE. So, like I said, like 5 shows already planned out. But if you want to get in, get in. If you don't have time to do that, join us for Sticky Live on Thursday nights. If you don't have time to do that, go check out Sticky Icky Tire Prep. I would recommend checking it out this week. If you don't like us on Facebook already, go do that, because there'll be a big announcement coming towards the end of the week that we've been hinting and teasing. And if you follow us on Instagram, you've already seen some spy photos and that. So you probably have a pretty good idea of what we're up to. But other than that, let me see if anybody else has anything. I don't see anything, so I will say good evening, everybody. Take care, and we will catch you soon.